Today we're talking about dysfunction. And if you're thinking, wow, I have dysfunctional people in my group, welcome to the club. We're all dysfunctional. We all have dysfunctions that we deal with and work through. So we're not talking about those people, we're talking about we people. And we are the ones, though, that get to lead through us and them and all the we as people with our many, many dysfunctions. So we're not singling out the really extra grace required people necessarily, but we're dealing with all people with all sorts of dysfunctions.
So speaking of dysfunctions, Evan, what's yours? We'll just start it off.
Well, I started to do this class. I made a whole, I just jotted down a list. They're actually on the back of that piece of paper at your table. And I thought of 35. It took me about 5 minutes. And I thought, I've led through a lot of these, and I am some of them. I can be a fixer. Sometimes I get impatient and I just want to solve your problem so that you will stop talking. Sometimes I can be a critic and like, this again, huh? Sometimes I'm the joke teller because I get bored easily in environments and I want to pop the cork and tell a joke and make people laugh and kind of move on because I can tell people are not paying attention. And I can be the rabbit trailer because sometimes my mind's just elsewhere. And I don't really want to talk about what I'm supposed to be talking about. I want to talk about the thing that I'm thinking about.
That's fair. That's fair.
So probably a whole bunch of other ones, but yeah, those were my top 4.
Yeah, I think sometimes, you might see on that list and think to yourself, I'm several of these, like Evan, or you might just be one. Or if you feel like you are none of these things, talk to the person next to you or something as well, and hopefully they'll let you know. But I would say for me, it's the fixing, rescuing. I tend to just want to jump in there and help people. It's usually with a really good intention, but not always the best execution, I would say. So we are also wanting to just highlight that if the word dysfunction doesn't sit well with you, we can also say it's a quirk, and that we all have them. And I loved what Jenna said even this morning in session. We can all be messy, and groups can feel messy, right? Like when you guys probably heard a lot of those examples, you guys may have said, okay, yes, I can be messy, and my group can be messy, and hopefully we can figure out how we can walk through some of those things, and that's why we're here. So we're here to actually have fun in this breakout session, which we hope you will. And we're going to be talking very little at the front end about a few things, and then we're going to let you guys practice, because that's really what we're here to do.
Right. And as Jim said, Jesus didn't invite the perfect people into his small group. He invited the outcasts, the people that had some level of dysfunction. Otherwise, they would have been in the camp with the Pharisees and all that. So every once in a while, I'll get a leader say, yeah, I just want these kinds of people in my group, the really mature ones, the ones that have it all together. And I said, those are our leaders. I'm not going to put all of our leaders in your small group. The mission is we will take these dysfunctional people and make disciples and help us all to grow up in our faith.
That's right. So there were a few things we wanted to run through about just things to consider in your group. And one is that there's no manual, right? We don't have a manual on how to do this. We might have a class and a playbook and some training, but like if a situation comes up, I loved Christian's example of this guy just went totally the other direction on with scripture. And what do I do in that situation? So there's going to be situations that come up, and we just want to not necessarily say the expectation is to lead perfectly, but just to practice. And we will fail. Jim even said that. We're going to fail, unfortunately. And so it's just about practicing and working on getting it right.
And leadership does not mean that you are better than everybody else. You're in a group and you're like, these people are actually way better than me. That's okay. That's just fine. Leadership just means that you have been put in a position to help. And you get to help all of these people to grow. And even if some are more mature than you, even if some are better group facilitators or leaders than you, we get to help people grow. So we're put in a position to help. It's not a position of I'm better than. It's a position that we get to help from. So I always want to remember that as a leader. We don't want to get arrogant and go, ooh, I'm better than everybody else. Nope, I'm just put in a position to help. We've got a couple in our group this year. I think they're better than we are as far as leading a group goes. So I get to help them and encourage them to now lead their own group here pretty soon.
Yeah, that's really good. That's how I feel about most of the, in fact, all of the people in our group. I think they're better leaders than we are. So, one of them being in the room, here, Lysandra. Hey, so we also want to talk about with leadership, just a call out to the ladies in the room. If you're leading a women's only group, just the opportunity you have to shepherd the women in your group, and if you are co-leading with your spouse, that it's co-laboring, and you're essentially there to also be discipling the women in your group. You're called up to co-lead with your spouse.
And as leaders, we have to make decisions fast. You're in a small group, and the person doesn't come up to you and say, hey, by the way, halfway through group tonight, Randy, I'm going to tell a really off-color joke, just so you're aware. You don't have any lead time. Wow, I'm going to be really offensive to women, about the time we're closing. So just so you can prepare for that. Yeah, people don't come up and tell us that. So when stuff happens, as Christian said, the head spin. Because they're going from the person that was doing something out of character to you, and everyone expects you to save the situation. No one's going to jump in and rescue it. At that moment, they're like, ooh, what's he going to do now? What's she going to say to that? And so later today, we're going to practice actually making some of those decisions. I hope it'll be fun. I hope it'll be enjoyable. But just knowing as a leader, you have to be prepared to make decisions quickly about things that you do not know is coming.
Yes, and taking a quick poll, if you have to make a quick decision and it feels uncomfortable, how many people struggle with that? How many people struggle with, I don't feel comfortable inserting my comments right here. So one of the challenges we have for you today is just to press into it. So things are not always going to feel comfortable, and as a leader, we get to practice and try that on. One of our leaders who's here today, Gianna, taught me this, is clear as kind. See, I'm learning so much from people. Clear as kind. And I think it's important to be clear and concise. So we'll get to practice being uncomfortable today, too. Yay. Who's excited?
And always, in my experience, always, it is better to have the hard conversation sooner than later. Have the hard conversation sooner than later. You're like, ooh, I should have that conversation, because later, here's what it sounds like. Randy, boys, you're right here. That's why people don't sit in the front. Like, for the last 6 months, you've been a little bit disruptive, and you keep interrupting people in group. Now, Randy would be irritated at me for telling him that. Here's why. Because he would be thinking, rightfully so, you as the leader have noticed something for 6 months, and you haven't said anything. That would be insulting. I would rather have Randy tell me, hey, Ed, tonight you interrupted a couple people. I know that you don't probably notice or want to do that, but just so you're aware, oh, okay, it's on time, it hasn't been good. Have the hard conversation sooner than later. Because when you have it later, they're going to know that you should have had it sooner. Just about every time.
And that's still uncomfortable, right? I would agree.
Okay, so there's two things to be prepared for difficult situations in your small group. One is mindset, and the other one is practice. Mindset and practice. And so we're going to practice here today in just a little bit. So in mindset, here's number one for you leaders to be thinking, what's going on in me? Before your group even starts, what's going on in me? Because if I had a hard day and I feel a little bit grumpy, maybe there's nothing I can even do about that, but I need to be aware of that. If I'm a little bit irritable going into group, I need to be aware of that. If I'm just overexcited about all the things, I need to understand that not everyone's going to be in the same frame of mind that I am. So what's going on in me, and how is that going to impact how I respond, how I react, how I lead tonight? So always think, what's going on in me?
And then in addition to that, just what's happening in the room. So you may know of some certain personal stories that are going on. Just be aware of who's in the room and what's going on in the room before you respond. And I think that just helps us be present with what we're about to say.
How sensitive is the person or the group? So if I'm in a group with, like my men's group, there's not a sensitive one in the bunch. We can be brutal to each other, and it's not a problem. Now, in my life group, I have Jeff Calvert in my life group. I can say anything to that guy, just straight up. He's never going to have a problem with it. However, I won't do that in the life group with everybody because there are some other people in there who are more sensitive. And people will pick up someone else's offense pretty easily. And so being aware of how sensitive is the group of people that I am working with. So know that even before you start your group.
And then also asking yourself, what is my relationship with this person? So sometimes we use the term around here, relational currency. So do I have the trust relationship built with this person to either directly come into that place, or is it something I need to do after the group, come alongside them in a different way? But all of that depends on the trust and relationship that you've built with them prior to the conversation happening.
And if someone does something quite out of line, I always want to ask myself this: will my response cause embarrassment or shame? And shame factor is big. If people feel shame or embarrassment in their small group, that's one of those deal breakers where they might not ever come back. And so you have to balance that in the moment, because if there's something heretical going on, like, I have to evaluate the shame factor. I also have to evaluate the safety of the group factor. So, but that's a big one to say, boy, we don't want to shame people. When I feel disrespected in an environment, I do not want to be back in that environment. And neither does anyone else in your small group.
And then asking yourself, are they a repeat offender? So Christian gave the example in our main session this morning about somebody he had to talk to 7 times, and they continued to do it. And he talked about even handling that he may have handled it differently. But that's just an example of asking ourselves, like, is this a behavior that I've seen time and time again?
And then, is anyone in danger of adopting a false belief system? Right? If I have a group that I know pretty well, and we have one brand new guy, and he says, hey, well, the Bible says this, and it doesn't really say it, I'm immediately going to evaluate the shame factor. I don't want to shame him, but if everyone in the group I know is okay, biblically, I might go, hey, let's talk about that later, because there's some other stuff we should explore with that. But if I have a whole group of people that are new, or I'm unaware, or I go, they might adopt a false belief system in this moment, I need to correct that right now. Because if we're saying, hey, there's lots of ways to get to heaven. If someone says that in my group, I'm going to address it right now. Especially if there are other people that might go, I didn't know that, but that's nice to know. Because you're the shepherd of your group. You're to protect the entirety of the group. And sometimes that could be at the expense of one to go, I might have to go, yep, that's not, and I'm going to do it as carefully as possible, but boy, I don't want to endanger the rest of the people, and I'm going to try to do that nicely, but I'm going to probably call that one out if I think someone else is going to adopt a false belief system. So you're going to have to make that decision in the moment, and have, with all those filters, you go, what do I do right now?
So I love all the response filters, and now, Evan, I have a situation I want to walk you through. Okay, so I've been a part of a group where there has been a husband and wife who often sit next to each other, which is a good idea. And he tends to talk and talk and talk and use the language of we over and over again. And I would say we could label him an overtalker. And his wife usually sits there and says very little. So what do I do in that situation? I would say he's a repeat offender, happens often. What do I do?
Model after Jim Putman, stop talking now. No, not always. Here's my go-to, is if I want to shut someone down, I want to do it by valuing someone else and not devaluing that person. So I can change courses by valuing people rather than devaluing people. And it looks like this. If that's the case, and it's Mike and Sherry, and I'm asking Sherry a specific question, and Mike is piping in and talking a bunch, I will not break eye contact with Sherry, and I will go, whoa, I think Sherry had something she was about to say. Sherry? And so I'm going to value Sherry. I really wanted to hear something from you tonight. So I'm not saying, Mike, you're an overtalker and you keep butting in. I'm saying, I really want to hear something from you tonight. So I'm valuing her to shut him down, but I'm not devaluing him in order to do that.
That's really good. Thanks, Evan. And so that was just one example of how we can lead through something that's potentially dysfunctional, but we wanted to go ahead and move into some fun. You guys ready? Who's ready? You guys ready?
All right, part 2. It is the practice. So we're going to do our best to practice leading through dysfunctional people and dysfunctional conversations. So this should be fairly simple. There's some, Tasha, you're going to walk us through the things that are on the thing, so you can follow along.
Okay, so everybody gets to play a part, which makes it really fun. First, we're going to have you guys assign a leader and a co-leader. And then in the center of your table, you're going to have dysfunctional, we call them character cards, okay? We're going to draw 3 of those. 3 people draw 1 of those. And then everybody else is a functional participant.
Okay, and if you draw one and you think, ooh, I don't really like this one, you're grown adults and you can do whatever you want. Fish through them until you find one that actually that's my wife and I were empty nesters. It's our favorite saying. We're grown-ups, we can do whatever we want. So yeah, don't feel stuck like, oh, I got this one. Like, you can fish through and find the one you want. But you're gonna respond in character. Unless you're not one of the characters, we're going to do 2 different rounds, so everybody should get to play a character. But you can fish through, find the one you want, and you're going to respond to the question in that character.
Yeah, so in front of you, you'll have a list of questions. So the co-leader and leader will choose a question, and then you guys will each basically go around like you're in a small group and answer that question based on the character that you selected. We are asking that one of the functional participants keep time, because you're functional. And so, we're going to give you about 10 minutes to roll through the first scenario. If you're in a team of 5, like we have up front, this is going to be really fun to watch. So I'm really glad everyone's dysfunctional, aside from the leader and co-leader. So, any questions? Did I miss anything of it?
Oh, and also, those of you who are leading or co-leading, you get to pick which question, and if you don't like any of those, pick your own question, because you're grown-ups and you can do whatever you want. So someone assign someone else those leader and co-leader roles. First one to talk, just assign those. And then draw some cards and ask a question and go around practice leading through dysfunction. Right. Did anyone have a hard time leading through some kind of dysfunction? Yes. Okay, what was the dysfunction that was difficult to lead through?
Okay, good.
I don't know what to do with interrupting. My mind, social media is making my mind go.
So the interrupter was hard. Okay, what else?
Hallie.
Just Hallie.
Yeah.
She's her own category. Write her on the back of that. Number 36, Hallie. All right. Well, my best trick for interrupters is don't make eye contact with them. Remember, eye contact from the leader gives permission to speak. And so you've got to be disciplined on that to, when you're interrupted, don't break eye contact with the person that is talking. Once you break eye contact, it shuts that person down and gives them permission to keep rambling on. And here's what, it sounds rude. I can do it without really people noticing it. I had one guy in my group like, you've done that to me. He was in the class that I was teaching, and he's like, you've done that to me. I'm like, yep. He's like, I didn't even notice at the time. I'm like, yes, I'm good at it. But if you, and the person that's interrupting, the interrupter, you want to put them right next to you if possible. Don't ever sit across from them, because you're going to make eye contact with the person across from you more than anyone else in the room. If you can sit fairly close to the interrupter or the over-talker, and then the person that I'm trying to draw out, if I put them right across from me, and if someone's interrupting, I can actually not break eye contact and go, whoa, 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 wait, I think Nathan was about to say something. And I can actually put my hand out with like a stop sign. And if I do it appropriately, it's not all that noticeable to go, whoa, 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 hold on. Because I think she or he was about to say something. So anyway, yeah, interrupters can be tough. Anybody else have a
What
tough
song
one?
do you have, Ross? What did you say was tough? The victim. Anybody else have a hard time with that?
Victim. The victim.
So how did you get people to stop being dysfunctional? Like, what actually worked? Yeah.
Me and the co-leader tried to refocus ourselves with the group, like, oh, what do you think? Or what did we talk about, and kind of trying to bring it back without directly, like you were mentioning, not directly doing somebody, but spreading it out a little bit more.
Yeah, if you wait for that pause and if Mike's over talking, he'll go, oh, if I can get any kind of pause at all, I'm just waiting for it to go, all right, Sherry, what about you? Just have to cut those people off. But again, being kind and appropriate.
So what role did you enjoy playing the most? What else? Someone enjoyed the interrupter.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it nice as leaders you get permission to be dysfunctional for a minute? You get to just jump in and interrupt and be all the things we're working against.
Okay, so we're going to do round 2. So whoever's leading that round, choose another leader-co-leader combo, and they get to lead through. Remember, we're trying to ask a question, we're going to go all the way around, and the leader is going to try to take command of the environment and lead through and get to the next person and actually get a question all the way around the table. And then have different people, if you want, to pick a different dysfunction, and like I said, sort through them, find one that's fun, and go. All right, who has a nomination for the most dysfunctional person, or who is best at being dysfunctional? So if we have really good actors who are great at modeling dysfunction, you should send them to talk to Nicole, because she's on our team with the creative arts. And they need some actors. Right, this round, what was the most dysfunctional thing that you had to try to lead through?
We had too many dysfunctional.
My wife! Oh, fantastic. Everything she does is perfect. What else? Chad Bull. Chad, what was your dysfunction?
Oh, well, the first one was the small group expert. I was great at it. And the Joker.
The Joker.
2 of my faves. I didn't like those. All right.
We had the interrupt.
We had the know-it-all.
The know-it-all.
Oh, the know-it-all.
He was good.
Did you kind of enjoy it though?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully it was supposed to be practice to lead through dysfunction, not to be dysfunctional. I hope you got that part out of your system, because when you go back to your real small group, don't practice the being dysfunctional, practice the leading through dysfunction. All right. We're going to give you some time now, just at your tables, to talk about leading through those dysfunctions, the people that had to lead through that. What did they do well? What would you have done differently? And then just adding on to that, what have you done in your group, experienced in your group, as far as leading through stuff? Or maybe what are you going through right now? Because your best resources are right here at your tables. And some of these folks have led through lots and lots and lots of stuff. And it'd be a good time just to talk about, how do we actually do this well? What have you done that works? What have you done that hasn't worked, so that we can learn from our mistakes as well?
Yeah, that's really good. Just a time, we've kind of noticed just creating space, I would say some margin for an open forum of like, hey, so here's some actual stories that are happening, and I just need to talk through it with some people. And like Evan said, you guys are in good company. This is a great room of leaders that have been doing it. And so just spend some time debriefing, just what did the leader and co-leader do well? How did they handle it? What stood out to you? And then just open forum on anything you kind of want to discuss with the people at your table.
Ready to go.